Hello and welcome to our interview. My name is Leanne Mallory. I'm the founder and CEO of Leading in Motion, where we specialize in connecting business leaders with the wisdom of their bodies so that they and their teams can thrive. In just a moment, we'll begin our interview, but first, a few words on why we're here. This interview is part of a larger project called the Corporate Dance Maven, supporting dancers and teachers of dance as well as other artists to break into the corporate market. Our goal is to help you figure out how to do the difficult and rewarding work of teaching dance, movement, and other somatic work in the business context. Whether you're currently teaching or you see yourself as a novice, whether you're an internal in an organization or an external consultant or service provider, our aim is that these programs help you take your work to the next level. Today we're going to be chatting with a friend of mine, Erin Guinup. Erin and I met at this year's Design for Dance conference in San Francisco, where I discovered that she's been doing some amazing work bringing her artistic talents into the business world. Erin studied music in college and pursued an opera career, and she's now been teaching voice, not dance, for almost 20 years. Erin runs a business called Musically Spoken that uses singing to teach healthy communication in the workplace and has started her work by working with Amazon. Erin, we'd love to hear a little more about you. I know that you're not a dancer per se, although it's part of who you are and where you come from, but tell us more about what your work and how it's working in the business world.
Well, I've been teaching voice and choirs for 20 years, and I got this random call out of the blue from Amazon, and I didn't know that I hadn't ever thought about going into a corporate space, but I taught the one class and was really intrigued by the ideas that came together as I prepared that course. So I spent a lot of time studying the correlation between the skills that we use as artists and how those apply to real world skills, that they're really valuable skills to learn how to communicate both with our voice in a healthy way, with good eye contact, with body language that sends a message that we are givers in the relationship rather than closed-minded. And so those are all really valuable skills just in terms of communication. And on top of that, there's lots of other skills that music teaches, like good decision making, helping you learn and refocus, that I'm really interested in exploring as well as I go down the road.
Beautiful, thank you. And for you, why is it important for business leaders to actually use their bodies, their voices, all of this stuff, as opposed to just learning about it in a textbook or reading about it in a trade book?
Well, we're human, and the things that make us human are our most valuable commodity, especially in a tech-driven world where artificial intelligence and virtual reality and as all this tech becomes more expansive and a part of our lives, the things that make us three-dimensional and not just a two-dimensional screen, the things that make us feel, the things that help us to relate to people and have empathy and help people feel things that a computer cannot give us, are incredibly valuable and make the biggest impact on our business success.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit more about your philosophy. So I'm losing my voice as we're speaking, so I already realized there's something here for me. Tell us more about how the voice and working with the voice can actually lead to better leadership. What's your thought on how this all fits together?
Well, some of the elements that produce good speech include breathing and posture. And your posture, if you're hunched down, is going to send signals of insecurity and poor leadership and indifference. Versus if you're looking stronger, your voice is going to clear up, because the way that the voice, if you sound like this, you're not going to sound very strong. But if you speak up, yes, now your voice is going to function much more like it's designed, and then you will be more effective as a leader because you sound like you're put together.
Got it. And so when you led the program that you did at Amazon, or when you're designing future programs, what are some of the things that you focus on? What do you take people through, or what do they get out of your workshops?
Well, we talk about a lot of the physical things that make a good voice. So the breathing, the posture, there's getting that sound connected with the breath, and being musical. Like if you say, I'd really like to visit with you today, that doesn't sound very sincere, but that's the pitch that gives that message. Like, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Sounds much more enthusiastic, makes you sound invested in the conversation. And and so we talk about those skills. So, and we do that through a lot of fun games. We improvise fairy tales to talk about different musical qualities that you might use in your speech. Papa Bear is going to talk lower, and Mama Bear might speak a little slower, and the signals that those cues give when you're trying to communicate an idea, especially in situations where there is tension that needs to be resolved. The way you use your voice can do a lot to resolve those differences and make it a much more positive outcome.
It's interesting. So I, in my executive coaching work, do a lot of work by phone, and definitely just a slight change in the tone or the way that they're expressing themselves will indicate to me very quickly that something has changed in them in terms of their emotions or where we're at in the conversation. So I know that even though it's not my forte, if you will, I read those things. And I suspect that's also really true in a leadership context. So I'm having a conversation with my direct report, and suddenly, my tone changes or their tone changes, and being able to track that must be really important. Something that we're not always paying attention to.
Well, we don't necessarily pay attention to, but it's all intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is an expert in reading emotions because we do it all the time. There's a study that says that 38% of the message you receive is the vocal tone. So 38%. And that's why emails are so often miscommunicated, because you don't have vocal tone to clarify the intention of what you're trying to say.
Do you have any advice for writing good emails then?
Well, the only thing I would say is that your relationship that's in person helps to inform your email. So if you have a sarcastic relationship in person, then a lot of things are going to be read as sarcastic or so forth. So your pre-existing relationship, if there's already a tension in your relationship, you have to work harder to make sure you resolve any of those when you're writing emails.
That blows my mind. I did not even think that you'd have an answer for that. I was kind of joking, but wow. And so it is. Again, if I think of some of my clients, they do, have a certain way of coming across as like their MO, that if it were to change would likely influence the way that people would imagine they were talking when they wrote their emails. Really excellent point. Thank you. My goodness, I'm learning a lot. So one of the things that people who are asking me and asking us questions about this work are asking, and I think it's true whether it's dance or voice or martial arts or something else, it's like, how did you actually get in the door in the first place? Or how do I, if someone's sort of asking me, how do I actually get in the door in the first place? You had an interesting break. They called you. Tell us a bit about what they wanted that actually was the skill that you were providing, and then how it unfolded from there.
Well, that's quite interesting, because yes, I don't know that many people get a call from a major corporation saying, "Hey, can you bring your artistic skills to life?" But what happened was the general manager of the facility recognized that some of his managers were losing their voice, and he remembered when he was in the military running cadence that they would sing as they ran and that they were breathing really strong, and he had no problem projecting then. So he thought that there must be a correlation between breath and healthy communication, especially in their fulfillment centers, which are quite loud, and they're less than ideal speaking circumstances. So being able to use the voice as effectively as possible is really quite critical in order to not sound like you're yelling, which can have a lot of negative connotations and can contribute to a hostile workplace.
And I have many different questions, actually. First question I have to that is, and it may be that a lot of folks who are watching this video are interested in dance or movement or something that's not voice per se. What's the translation, do you think? Is it posture? Is it, what are the other things that a dancer who teaches technical dance might also teach that are relevant in a workplace context from your looking?
Well, exactly. I think there's a certain amount of, embodiment, which is a really big word right now, I think is a very big part of all the arts, because you're really present. And that idea of really focusing on who you're talking to when there's so many distractions is highly relevant, because there's so many demands on our time. So being able to look someone in the eye is quite profound. And I had a couple of participants in my last class who could not make eye contact, and it was so difficult for them to do this eye contact exercise that we did. And they realize this is something we need to work on. And it's especially true among millennials that tend to, that haven't had a lot of arts education in their general education because of cuts that were made. And so they don't have as much exposure. And so they're very easy to say, I don't sing, I don't dance. And being able to expose them and help them feel like you are, because you live, you walk, you dance, you talk, you sing. Those are not separate instruments. They're not separate separate beings. If you can draw a line, you can be an artist. Just because someone doesn't pay you for it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Doesn't mean that it's not part of who you are.
And tell us a little bit more about, so you said, not everybody gets the call, and I didn't get the call, so it's not how I got started per se. But you have set yourself up in some way that they found you, that you were the obvious choice when they were looking for something like that. So tell us how you've been running your business, or what you kind of have out there that had them be able to find you.
Well, they found my website, which had details about my experience working with damaged voices. And so he recognized he had a problem with that. And so that was, okay, that sounds like someone, and the email I got was, I have no idea if you would do anything like this. We're kind of taking a shot in the dark, but any interest in leading a workshop like this? And I almost turned it down because it was so far outside of what I do and what I was focusing on. But then I thought, what the heck, I'll try it. I can do a class. And I didn't think it would turn into anything, but as I did it was just so much fun. And as I've continued this conversation over the last few months, it's been fascinating to see the responses from people. And I'm a firm believer in collaboration and working with other people and just giving, and that opportunities kind of happen. And I feel like that's somewhat what happened with Amazon, but I have an opportunity I can't say yet because it's not signed on the dotted line, but an opportunity that came about because I was volunteering and then and just helping a musical group out, and I met an HR manager from a major company who's very interested in the things that I'm doing. So, and it's one of my goal companies, which I just couldn't believe how that happened, but I wasn't looking for it. I was doing good things and not, I kind of felt like I was off track because I was like, I need to focus on XYZ, but it's not who I am to be entirely focused in one direction and be just looking out for me. And so I've made a commitment to volunteer with this group, and doors opened. And I think when you're doing good things, doors open. You meet people and they see that you're a good person and that you're someone that maybe they'd like to learn more from. And then the conversation can proceed from there.
It's beautiful. Thank you. When we met, one of the things that I loved about you and still love about you is how true you are to yourself, and how you've come into this work not by chasing it, but really by doing exactly what you love and showing up and putting yourself out there, like you said, and that in that these opportunities have started to come forward. And I just really appreciate that about you as an artist. And it also gives me hope that there's more and more hunger for this kind of work in the corporate context, if those of us who are doing what we love well and opening ourselves to being available to that are starting to get the call or are starting to be brought in.
Well, one of my students told me a quote. He's phenomenal actor, but he's trying to find work in between until he gets this big break that he's looking for. And he said that the quote, that vocation is where you take your fondest desire, your fondest joy, and find it where it matches the world's greatest need. And I really thought that was a beautiful statement, because there's lots of people who say, I want to be an artist and do it in a way that's maybe somewhat self-serving rather than helping someone else. And when you take your art and make it about serving other people, the work will come. The work will come if you're not worrying so much about the paycheck. Yes, the paycheck is important and you need to pay your rent, but being able to do things because you believe in what you're doing and that you believe that other people's world will be better, that's when I think magic can strike.
Oh, magic can strike. And you're such a beautiful example of that. I adore you. So how is your business evolving now that this type of work has come online? I'm really curious, two things. One, just what are the changes you're having to make to get ready for this new kind of work? And then also, we'll start there actually.
So I've been, this past year, I had a lot of singing engagements. And so I have, for the coming season, slowed down a little bit. I passed on a show and some other things that I might otherwise do because I felt like it was an either or option. I had to do, I couldn't do my best work on this company and get it going if I was in rehearsals every night. However, I am still singing, and because I feel like me being an artist is my competitive advantage. If I start turning too much into a business person, I lose my edge. And so I want to make sure that I'm performing. So I've so far 5 things booked for the coming season, which is down from this crazy season. I had a lot of performances this coming season. So I've scaled down a little bit. I'm also scaling down my voice studio. I was teaching up to 24 hours a week of private students, and I had a lot of students graduate this year, both from my high school studio and my college studio. And so I'll just not be taking as many this fall. So I have a natural attrition, which I'm almost halving my studio, and that's perfect. It'll be a nice balance for me, and still allow me to work with the students that I love so much, but give me enough time to really do that. And I'm taking the summer off as well, so that I can put some real work into making those connections that are important.
Nice. And with regards to the program, so you started out with one workshop. How are you thinking about building that one little thing into, are you building a longer program or a series of workshops, or what's the work evolving into?
Well, that's so I have a couple of things going. I'm waiting for final word, but I'm presenting at a couple conferences, I think, this fall. I've submitted some proposals. I've also made contact with a tech company that has some wearable technology that I think would be really applicable to my workshops. And so we're in discussions about possibly doing some type of collaboration so that's pretty exciting for me, because I really am intrigued by that intersection of art and technology. I think that's where the new frontier is. It's that wonderful ambiguous place between this really data tech, like firm, no change kind of philosophy, and then something that's very loose and always evolving. I guess that's not really fair to say that not evolving, but combining those two diametrically opposed approaches, I think there's something really beautiful in that place. And the truth is, tech's not going anywhere. And so as artists, we have to find a way to combine those two, or else in danger of being lost and seeming irrelevant, even though we will never be irrelevant.
Thank you. Tell us about, and a question I often get, let's say, is what does the program look like? And so if you have an hour, what can you do in an hour? Or, I guess 2 things. 1, what do you do in an hour? And then 2, what's your ideal kind of setup in terms of, is it, a longer, a full day, a half day? Would you do a couple of workshops that are an hour or 2? If, let's say it's your dream client and you want to build it, how you think would be best?
Well, so the format that I've liked best so far is a 2-day, 2.5-hour session. So 5 hours over two days. I really liked that format because it gave me a chance to present a lot of information, for them to digest it overnight, and for them to come back the next day, and for me to be able to apply it in really creative, fun ways. And one of the things that I did when I have that much time is I can do, as a singer, I do vocal master classes where a student will sing a song and then I'll critique it. And we did that with speeches. And so they had to give a 30-second speech, and then we would talk about how to customize the things that we've talked about for them personally, what traits they would best focus on to get their best results. So that was quite fun. And there were some really creative speeches in that format. I've done 2 1-hour workshops, and they're not my favorite so far, because I feel like I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. And I also, if I do another 1 hour, I need to resist the temptation to throw too much information in, and just give them enough that can be digested in 1 hour, because you have all this wonderful knowledge and you want to give it, but it's really hard to absorb if you put too much in. We're not computers, we don't download. And so being able to, people have to have the opportunity to discover and make those realizations for themselves. So that's really kind of the ideal format for me. And I think 2.0 versions of this will involve probably it will be about sustainability. So ways that I can sustain those results. So that's one of the reasons why I'm talking to the tech company. It's what I'm hoping to probably do an online course at some point, but I'm not there yet.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's really great to hear an example of how something can grow and what you like and don't like. I know that I tend to be asked, make it shorter. And as an artist as well, I'm like, I have all these different things I want to share, and what people can digest in a period of time is actually not very much. An hour is just not a lot. You can do one exercise or two. And so I appreciate the frame that you've given to it there. Another thing that I get asked is value. So how did you think about the difference between what you charge to your private clients versus what you're charging to a corporation when you're bringing this work forward?
Well, I'm charging more, obviously quite a bit more for my corporate workshops for a couple of reasons. One, well, it's a group setting. And so when I'm working one-on-one, it's a different dynamic, and I don't have to do a lot of prep versus when I do these classes. I made books, I had some toys basically that they played with to help exhibit that. And I did a lot of research to make sure I was not wasting their time, because when a business brings you in for a workshop, it's not only the time money they're paying you, but it's all their employees' time that they're paying. And so if you wait, and not only the money they're paying that employee, but the lost revenue from that time. So there's substantial cost on making sure that we don't waste their time, that they're getting really good value for their time. So it's actually in their best interest for me to charge more, so that I'm like a well-oiled machine and have a really clear plan that's going to be use their time well.
That makes sense. Just looking at my notes regarding other possible questions. Is there anything else that you want us to know, or any advice that you would offer to someone who's trying to get into this kind of work?
Well, I think it's a beautiful new frontier, this new place of art and business. I don't think enough people have had this conversation, and yet it's so vital for this time. And so when I've had conversations about how we're really human, and how important that it is to make sure that we're in touch with the things that make us special, that make us human, that has really resonated with people, that we're not robots, because so much of society does treat us sometimes like robots. And so the things that help us to feel, to help us be aware. I was in a class last week that where the instructor said that there's research showing that young people are only seeing themselves in 2 dimensions, that they're not seeing themselves as whole people, and the implications that has on so many factors of our well-being is actually quite profound if you don't even see yourself as a whole person and connecting who we are on the inside with what's on the outside. So those are, I think, I guess to answer your question, I got a little tangential there, but what's resonating with businesses is data. So I've been spending time finding data to support these very non-data driven things, because there's so much research on the arts. I know, at least music wise, there are dozens of studies that come out every single day that talk about how music is so important. And it's a lot from the music education lobby that tries to convince educate the government to fund education. But my big world goal is to convince businesses that these arts are really essential and that they need these not only because it makes their employees happy, not because it feels good, but because it's really critical to us being successful, that the things that we are more focused, that we can make better choices, that we can have better relationships if we are in touch with the things that the arts teach us. And so then my hope is that I can convince a company like Amazon or Boeing or Microsoft that they need to be lobbying more for arts education in the schools and arts education in their businesses, that they will make the changes that I've always wanted to see, because we are starting this dialogue about how important it is to be human.
I totally share your goal. Thank you. And actually what strikes me about what you said is that there's a synergy between what businesses think is important and what we're willing to fund from an education perspective. And that if businesses are starting to say, gosh, actually, we want well-rounded people who do have these different abilities and who haven't lost this in the context of education, perhaps that also back informs the educational field to say, well, we should be investing in this as well. So it's like all at the same time in all directions. And I'm happy to stand beside you in that desire and intention. Erin, how do you have any recommendations for those of us who are already doing the work on measuring? So they want to see results, they want to know this stuff does have an impact. How are you measuring the results of your work? Or how would you, even if you haven't figured it out fully yet, like where are you looking there?
Well, that's actually one of my summer objectives. I'm actually going to do a class hopefully next month where I have an intake and an outtake form so that people can show what, so that we can start tracking some of these results. Because again, we're a data-driven world. And so if we can find data to support our claims, so much stronger our case becomes. I know that my evaluations from Amazon, at least, were really positive, and it makes a really stronger case when I got 4.7 out of 5 average. There was one category I need to work on, and I'm working on making sure I fix that. But they loved that class and they felt it was really relevant. So I can take that now and say, hey, this is what people are saying. People who are not singers, who maybe walked into the room somewhat reluctantly and realized this makes a difference in my life, and they can see the differences in their peers as when you point that out. When you see the guy who no one would maybe even notice, who walked in really slumped over, yeah, how are you? And then for him to take a position that looks like a leader and seeing almost people's eyes well up in tears because they're like, that's the guy he could be. That's his potential. That's who he could really be. That was pretty magical. And that, I wish I had that on tape, because that would have been my best selling point. So that's also another goal, is I need to get video so that people can see these changes and how quickly they can take place as soon as someone's aware of it, because everyone talks. Everyone knows how to do that. So a slight little change oftentimes can make a really big difference. And so I guess then that as dancers, then that would be equally true. We all walk, we all move, and to say that we don't dance, is really kind of disconnecting ourselves from who we are. I do not consider myself a dancer by any stretch. My daughter's trying to launch a professional ballet career. She's in France right now studying ballet, and so she's a ballerina. So it's very easy for me to say I'm not a dancer, because she really is, and people will hopefully pay her money to do so. But when I went to that Design for Dance conference, I realized that I was stepping into that place where a lot of my clients will, where I'm not a dancer. And I started saying that first, and then I realized I am a dancer. I move, I walk, I am capable of doing that. And once, it was intimidating to be in a room full of dancers. And then once we started moving, there was no judgment. And everyone was like, what are you talking about? You totally can move. And that was really empowering. And hey, I am a dancer. No one's going to pay me to dance, but I am a dancer. And that's part of what makes me human. I can dance, I can sing, I can draw. I'm not a great artist, but those are things that we all can do.
Mm. You really speak well to the challenge that the clients or the people we might be serving and doing this work would face. Like, oh, what if I don't think I am, or all of the potential inner resistance there, and also to what's on the other side, like this more full way to actually be human in a human body and not shut down or held back in certain ways. It really fully expressed, which gosh, if we're leaders, that's going to have to be a useful skill or a useful thing to be able to bring forward.
Yeah, well, and I think then that brings the point is when you market it, then it's really important to emphasize points that speak to them, to address that serves problems that they're facing. Um, Maybe embodiment, I know, is really invoked, but that might not be the best phrase. For me, I've chosen to focus on communication skills because everyone understands communication skills, and that's something that we could all work on, because no one has ever not had a misunderstanding because their message didn't come across quite right. So that's something everyone, myself included, needs to continue working on. So I guess my suggestion would be to find that thing that people would recognize as being a problem that you're solving, and then using dance as a model to find your way to solve their problem. It's where your greatest desire meets the world's greatest need.
And when you expressed to me before we started this interview how you say musically spoken does ... in a very clear sentence, will you say that sentence again as an example for us?
Musically spoken does workshops that uses singing to help with healthy speech and communication skills.
Beautiful. Exactly. It's very clear. When I hear you say that, I'm like, I need that, or I don't need that, actually. And it's very easy to say yes to.
Well, and that's important, is to learn how to be concise about what you're saying. What are you actually delivering? Because truthfully, I could deliver a lot of different things. People have said, oh, that's such a great team building kind of thing, which I've been warned is maybe a dangerous place to go, because people do a one and done kind of thing with team building. So yes, true, there's some team building that's involved in that process, and some risk taking and learning how to step outside your box. But what I think is more valuable are skills that they're seeing day to day is their body language issues. That's another communication. Body language is a whole other ball of wax that dancers are uniquely qualified to address. And there's studies that say up to 55% of communication is body language. So, and a lot of that is tied into tone, but there's a lot of ways in which dancers could use their skills to address real needs, solve real world problems with the skills that they've spent years and years developing.
Thank you, Erin. It's been so great talking to you. I really appreciate both your perspective as well as how you're solving for these problems in the world right now. If we want to follow you or track you, where can we find you? Website, Twitter? What is the best way to get a hold of you or to pay attention to what you're up to?
So my website is musicallyspoken.com, and I also have a personal website, which is Erin Guinup, ERINGUINUP.com, which has more about my performing and teaching in the private sector. And then I also am on Facebook and Twitter.
We will talk to you there. Thank you so much. And if you're watching and you want to keep track of Corporate Dance Maven or find out about the upcoming courses that we have, you can find us at corporatedancemaven.com or on Facebook at Corporate Dance Maven. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you again soon.